It's a jam-packed day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast just dropped spoilers for 4 different sets. And on one hand, Modern Horizons 3 looks absolutely ridiculous. On the other hand, Bloomburrow looks absolutely incredible. And Assassin's Creed's over there just looking kind of crazy.
Magic. History. I'm an old wizard. The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for an overloaded installment of Mega Magic News. Today, it's all about spoilers. Wizards lost their mind and started dropping info about tons of different sets, giving us cards, artwork, background information. So we've got Thunder Junction, Modern Horizons 3, we've got Bloomburrow, and Assassin's Creed. Now, the amount of information they gave will not fit into a video. Luckily, I did a live stream earlier today where I went over everything that they put out, and it is a ton. But what we're going to do here is take a look at a special sampling of what they put up in terms of cards specifically across the 4 sets. We're going to start out with Modern Horizons 3, but really where the excitement for me is Bloomburrow. It looks so good and like traditional Magic the Gathering. But with no further ado, let's look at some rectangles. We're starting right out the gates with pure broken insanity in the form of Emrakul, the World Anew. She's escaped from the moon and returned for ridiculousness. 12 mana gets you a 12/12. When you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. This is such an insane ability that I had to read it twice the first time. I went, wait, what? This is so wild. And then on top of that, you've got flying, protection from spells, just from spells, and from permanents that were cast this turn. That is absolutely insane. Now, there is a downside. When Emrakul leaves the battlefield, you have to sacrifice all creatures you control. So it's not purely upside. They need something to rein in the insanity of the first ability. But then they go, hey, you know what? We're also going to put madness on it. And if you don't know what madness is, it lets you cast the spell when you're discarding the card. So if you discard Emrakul, instead you can cast it for 6 colorless mana. And if you'll notice when it says when you cast the spell, you gain control of all creatures target player controls, that's not specifically just going to trigger when it's cast from your hand and for full mana like other cards require. This is going to trigger regardless of how it's cast. It's so insanely overpowered. You just take somebody's entire board, right? You may think in Commander this isn't a big deal, but this was designed for Modern one-on-one. This is an ultra powerful effect. They have some insane Eldrazi action going on. They have an excellent Eldrazi Uncommon enabler as well. I talked about that over in the live stream if you want to check it out. Next up, we've got a Johnny Nakatal Pariah. Now, they're doing a series of flip planeswalkers, similar to the ones that we got back in the Origin days, where on one side you have the actual creature, and on the other side you have the planeswalker of them. So it's trying to show the planeswalker igniting into its spark, right? 1 white and 1 for a 1/2 cat warrior. When a Johnny enters the battlefield, create a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token. So admittedly, it feels weird when you look at a Johnny and you're like, let me get this straight. That big beef boy right there is a 1/2? I don't buy it for a second. But they have the stats that low to balance out the power level, because when you look at it, you're like, okay, you get 2 bodies and you're getting 3 power and 3 toughness in total for your 2 mana. So, a Johnny transforms under the following conditions. Whenever 1 or more other cats you control die, you can exile a Johnny, return him to the battlefield transformed, under his owner's control. This is so easy to do, considering they give you a cat that's very fragile with 1 health just from making the card. The flavor text says his pride denied him, his brother did not. So if you don't know the flavor text behind this artwork is a Johnny and his brother. The extra token represents his brother Jazzle, I believe is his name. So when a Johnny loses his brother, this spark ignites and he comes back as a Johnny, na cattle avenger. And look at how intense he is. How awesome is it to go from the peaceful original artwork where he's standing up on the hill there with his brother, and now to like, I am rage and destruction. And you'll notice as well that this is when he becomes white-red, representing the passion and the rage over his loss. You can see the color of the card actually indicated by the little circle beside Legendary Planeswalker. Because it's red/white, he counts as red and white. That's what they do when you're dealing with cards that don't have mana costs. So his abilities go like this. He's got starting 3 loyalty, +2 loyalty, put a +1/+1 counter on each cat you control. 0, create a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token. When you do, if you control a red permanent other than a Johnny, he deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target. It's a little bit wordy, but that's a pretty solid ability. And then you have -4. Each opponent chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control and sacrifice the rest. It's a one-sided cataclysm. And he starts at 3 loyalty, so you only have to use his +2 ability once, and you're ready to activate his ultimate, and you still get to keep him on the board. It's absolutely crazy. It's kind of funny when I look at the card a little bit. Johnny's head feels almost like it doesn't fit his body, but that's just a quirk of the art, I'm sure. After that, we've got Flare of Cultivation, which to me is known as Kodama's Reachier. This is 2 green and 1. It's a sorcery, but you can sacrifice a non-token green creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. So they are doing a cycle of 5 different free spells in this set, and I expect them all to be really solid. The biggest balancing aspect of Magic the Gathering is casting costs, and making spells free tends to be a problem pretty frequently. So Wizards knows this, right? They also, though, want to have a set that really pops, gets your attention, and ultimately makes it way into Modern. So we do have an element of power creep that's going on, because this is literally the spell Kodama's Reach. When you look at the ability, it says, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal the cards, put one onto the battlefield tapped, and the other into your hand. But you can just sack a creature to cast this instead. So on the first turn, you can just have some little green donk that you put out for 1, sack it to go get a land. And yes, you are giving up a creature, but when it comes to Modern, you're dealing with a huge card pool, and you can easily take advantage of that. This is incredibly solid, right? There's a reason that this is a rare when Kodama's Reach was just an uncommon. And again, any spells that are free, they tend to raise the flags for me and go, okay, this can lead to real problems. Now, with a card like this, you may be asking, look, what's the deal? How can it be that big a problem if all you're doing is getting lands? Well, when spells are free, sometimes it's not just the spell itself that's the problem. It's the aggregate, the collection of all the things you can do in one big sequence that just make it too powerful overall. Now, I do love that the flavor text is just trying to subtly tell you to buy more of the set. They're like, you need to expand your horizons. Buy more Modern Horizons 3. Also, I love that the artwork literally shows somebody being unmade. It looks to me like this is one of the elves from Call Time, and they're sacrificing their very essence to turn it into natural growth. And that feels like a very elf thing to do. But the elves of Kaldheim are warriors, right? And this has more of that warrior defiant vibe to it than a healing, nurturing elf vibe. Ultimately, I really dig the flavor on this, and it's a really powerful card. Then we've got the fact that they're bringing back the fetch lands. It was expected, right? They're bringing back the fetch lands. They're doing them retro bordered. My favorite of the artworks that I saw is the Flooded Strand, right? I just dig the vibe overall. You can almost feel the waves crashing up on the rocks. And you get that little bit of flavor too, saying once a prosperous, vantress town, now swept clean and reclaimed by the waters of the wilds. I like that as the idea of like, oh, you sacrifice this land, it's already kind of ruined. It's a good vibe overall, but again, this is my favorite of the cycle. Not going to spend any more time talking about that because we got to move on to Oko and pew, 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 Thunder Junction. So, Oko, the ringleader. Here he is in all of his shirtless glory. And with what looks like a couple of jars of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ooze stuck to his waist there. So, 4 mana gets you a 3 loyalty Oko. He's back. At the beginning of combat on your turn, Oko, the ringleader, becomes a copy of up to 1 target creature you control until end of turn, except he has hexproof. I love this ability because Oko is a shapeshifter, and the earliest shapeshifters like Vesuvian shapeshifter could take on the shape of anybody they wanted to, but they could only do it during the upkeep. Oko is such a fluent planeswalker that he can just boom, do it, not planeswalker specifically, sorry, but in this case shapeshifter, he's so good at it that he can do it right at the beginning of combat. He doesn't get stuck at the upkeep. So you can do it at the last minute right before you swing, and giving him hexproof changes up the fact that it's really easy to take creatures out. There's tons of creature destruction and way less planeswalker destruction, so it makes it less risky to do that swap up. So, on top of the copying, you've got 3 loyalty, +1, draw 2 cards. If you've committed a crime this turn, discard a card. Otherwise, discard 2 cards. So crime is a new concept in Magic the Gathering. It's very straightforward. The idea is if you target your opponent or anything of theirs at all, you've committed a crime. So if you cast a spell targeting your opponent, their graveyard, their library, one of their creatures, one of their spells on the stack even, you're considered to have committed a crime. So for this card, you need to target your opponent with something. Then the second ability is -1, create a 3/3 green elk creature token, because Oko has to make 3/3 elk tokens. It's so ingrained into Magic at this point that I am literally going to re-release my limited edition 3/3 elk t-shirt. It'll be available down with the Teespring link. So if you want to get the 3/3 elk t-shirt, now is your chance. And his -5 ability, for each other non-land permanent you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. This is bonkers. It's got card draw built into it. It's got creatures built into it that you can use to defend him. And then you can multiply everything you have on the table. And that last ability does kind of feel like you're getting rich from the robberies, because that's the idea behind this set. Shirtless Oko tricks his gullible son into helping him pull off a heist with the help of random other evilies like Tiny Bones and also Rakdos, the like demon dude from Ravnica. It's a interesting mix, right? So every piece of artwork that features Oko is gonna be the same. Check out Shirtless Oko, wonder why he has no scars because he's living shirtless, and then remember, oh yeah, he's a shapeshifter, so I guess he can actually get away without having a shirt. But you're like, bro, am I supposed to be impressed by those abs? They're not real muscles. You just shapeshifted that. Anybody can suck in their gut, Oko. Anybody can suck in their gut. And what's up with that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ooze, son? Okay, let's move on to the next card. Sword of Wealth and Power. You thought the cycle was done for all the different swords? Well, Wizards has invented new aspects of it, and this one is totally crazy. 3 casting cost, costs 2 to equip it. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 like all the other swords, but this one gives protection from instants and from sorceries instead of 2 different colors. Whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, and when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it, and you can choose new targets for the copy. This is crazy on every level. It's so OP, bro. Protection from instants and sorceries means protection from most ways of getting rid of a creature. The artwork I don't know what's going on. When I look at that, I don't go Sword of Wealth and Power, but I do go, this is insanely epic artwork. This sword is super nutty, but it looks like it's being jammed through the head of a Phyrexian, right? So I don't know exactly what this is, but also note that the expansion symbol for this is not the cowboy hat, and that's because this is part of the Vault series that's included inside the Thunder Junction set. So these are the equivalent of list cards. Man, this is a powerhouse card. After that, we have a Thoughtseize reprint, and this is shown off in the reporting a crime style. Remember how I talked about we were going to have this breaking news style in every pack? Well, here's an example. So you get a reprint of Thoughtseize, which is incredible discard, and it's done with this framing where you have this lone wanderer walking off, and this dude's laying here with smoke billowing out of his eyes and his mouth. Something nefarious has happened. His mind has been cooked. I don't know. I just love the uncaring stranger walking away. Clearly what he's done just happened because Buddy's head is still smoking from it. That is awesome flavor. And apparently this character is going to feature in a number of these pieces of artwork, but I don't know if it's going to turn out that it's like in all of them and it's a big story featuring him. But either way, I really dig the flavor execution of this. It's pretty cool. And speaking of cool flavor, we've got wanted posters. Remember how I said that they were going to do this kind of thing and it was guaranteed? Well, here it is, friends. We got Tiny Bones, the Pickpocket. He costs 1 black. He's 1/1 Death Touch. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you can cast target non-land permanent card from that player's graveyard, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. I love it. It's fantastic. I love that he has a goofy little sheriff's badge. He's running around stealing stuff. The regular version of him actually depicts him running down a piano while the piano player is just like, oh, hey, what's happening? This is a fun little bit of flavor, and he does have a little Wild West vibe to him overall. So that's well done. I enjoy it. Now, let's talk about some strangeness that's going on with Assassin's Creed. Take a look at this. This is Cleopatra, the Exiled Pharaoh. So 1 green, 1 black, and 2 for a 2/4. She's a legendary human noble. She's got allies at the beginning of your end step. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other target legendary creatures, or Betrayal. Whenever a legendary creature with counters on it dies, draw a card for each counter on it. You lose 2 life. So this one screams to me that it was meant for Commander, right? But what's really weird about it is we're seeing real world people in a Magic set, right? Like we have seen people from a parallel Earth in Magic sets, right? You have your people from Jurassic Park who aren't from the real Earth because Jurassic Park's not from the real Earth. You've got people from Walking Dead. So we have like real people in a version of Earth, but Cleopatra is just straight up a lady who existed for real. And now we have her on a card. So what's going on? Well, Assassin's Creed is doing this thing where they're having a bunch of different historical figures, and they're actually the cards that they're choosing to do serialized as well. So when it comes down to them, they're going to be serialized in whatever language is appropriate for the character. So with her, you're going to have it in Greek, and the serialized cards will only be available in Greek. It's a very, very odd choice. Out of all the things that they spoiled, it's the thing that stuck out to me as the strangest. The other Assassin's Creed stuff feels pretty on point, and I went over a bunch of it in the stream. Some of it really adds up flavor-wise. So the Cleopatra and who was it, Leonardo da Vinci in the Italian serialized, those felt weird, and the cards themselves don't feel particularly powerful or engaging overall. So I don't know how well those are going to do. But now I want to talk about what I'm most excited about, and that is Bloomburrow, okay? So we've got Mabel, the heir to Cragflame, okay? This Bloomburrow world is one where you don't have humans, you don't have elves. All the normal humanoid races you are used to are not here. So we have all of these different animals. Like instead of humans, we're going to be following mice. Mice are the equivalent of people. And then the equivalent of an elephant in this world would be a wolf in their world, right? Because its size scales appropriately. And they're doing a bunch of funky stuff with this. They have a bunch of cool concept art. But Mabel here is a 3/3 legendary mouse soldier. And while we're on this line of the card, I just want to point out that the expansion symbol for this card is a maple leaf, right? And I am Canadian. So for me, it's just an extra level. Like, this was made for me. It's like, sorry about the detectives and the pew pew guys. Here you go. Here's some actual fantasy, the stuff you really want. This is a mouse dressed in like leaf garments with a leaf shield and a little ruby clasp and a flaming magical sword standing on lily pads while water is splashing around. And I'm not sure if she's like slashing water out of the air, but I loved the flavor of this. And this is a mouse lord. 3/3 for 3. This is a beefcake mouse. Gives your other mice +1/+1. And when Mabel enters the battlefield, you create Cragflame. And there's a token for Cragflame. Take a look. Here's Cragflame as the token. Instead of blazing in her hands, now it is inert, laying on this wooden plank while some other mouse looks at it. And Cragflame gives equipped creature +1/+1, vigilance, trample, and haste. That feels like a legendary sword. I just love it. I love the idea of a mouse with a legendary sword. It's so cool, man. I can't wait for this Bloomburrow stuff. We also have this epic bear. Check out Lumra, Bellow of the Woods. Now, there's different artworks of this, but we're looking at this specific alt art styling that they're doing because I'm a huge fan of it. We'll talk about that after the powers of the card. So this is mythic craziness. 2 green and 4 gets you a star, vigilance, and reach. Lumra's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control, Multani style, and Deck and Blackblade style. When Lumra enters the battlefield, mill 4 cards. It's interesting to note that it just says when Lumra enters, right? It doesn't say enters the battlefield. So I guess they're just trimming that language down because they're running out of space on cards. So when Lumra enters, mill 4 cards, then return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is a shoe-in for any deck that loves to bring lands back from the graveyard. But even if you have no interest in using that for any other purpose, just playing this card, you could mill anywhere from 0 to 4 lands off the top of your deck, and they all go straight into play. So this can ramp you up pretty hard. It works like a Primeval Titan to a smaller degree, and that card was so powerhouse that it got banned. Take a look at the artwork. It's like a bestiary where they're explaining to you, oh, these are the different elements of the beast. Like, check out its gigantic long fangs. I love this kind of stuff. And look at the little sprouts that are growing out of its back, right? Like, it literally grows lands. It's such a cool concept. So again, my friends, there's so many more cards and concept artwork and everything else that got spoiled, but it's too much for one video. So I encourage you to go over and check out the live stream on my live stream archive. It's already uploaded, so if you want to watch it, the thumbnail looks like the one you can see on the screen now, and it'll pop up in a few seconds. Thanks for coming by. Big shout out to my patrons. Thank you very much for supporting my channel, and I will see you all in the next video.